being a Twitter influencer.
Η μέρα νούμερο 3
Μάγκες. Έχω
ξεκινήσει.
You heard about TikTok from me.
Κάτσε να τελειώσω
and now we have Twitter today from Mario and Richard, so really excited to hear about that.
Κοιμήθηκα 5,5 ώρα χθες, ξεκίνησα στις 1 το μεσημέρι.
Again, a woman who really needs no introduction, your host for the last 2 days. I'd really like to welcome Randi Zuckerberg, founder and CEO of Zuckerberg Media. Randi has always believed that the world thrives when technology and the arts come together. After leaving a successful career in Randi, and she's starred in Rock of Ages on Broadway, winning 3 Tony Awards. Incredible. What a woman of all trades. And today she's a respected advisor, investor, board member, uniquely bridging the world of Web3 and the creative arts. Please give me a big round of applause. Welcome Randi Zuckerberg to the stage. You're not sick of me yet because we're going to be doing a keynote and then I'm moderating a few more panels after this, but it's a delight to be back up here with you. And I have the wonderful fortune of being there at the very dawn of social media and live streaming. So I couldn't imagine a better topic for this incredible group of content creators than taking you back in time and sharing a little bit of what it was like in those very early days of before being a content creator was even a thing. And I'm also excited because, you know, yesterday I got to interview and lead panels with a lot of great minds, but I realized that we haven't really gotten to know one another at all. In fact, you know, I was doing push-ups for you, we were doing all kinds of things, but a lot of you were still tagging me as Mark Zuckerberg's sister in your posts, and I guarantee that is the least interesting thing about me as a person, is who I'm related to. So I'm going to give you a little bit of insight into who I am, and so that we can get to know each other a little more. All right, so a few things about me. I graduated from Harvard University, which is a very obnoxious way to start a story, but that other Zuckerberg did not graduate from Harvard. Thank you, yes, thank you very much. So that's actually the only win that I have in my life over him, so that's the end of my keynote. Bye. I am a mom of 3 kids. And that they're just the absolute loves of my life, and I now have a teenage son who's taller than I am, which is wild. And I recently took up running as a hobby, which I'll talk about. Thank you. And I just this summer completed a 100-mile race, or 100. Thank you. So it's been a pretty wild ride there. But let me take you back to young Randi, excited, off to Harvard. My dream was to sing on Broadway. I wanted to be a professional singer and an actress, and my dreams got immediately squashed because I got to Harvard and I got immediately rejected from the music major. And that was my first entrepreneurial pivot because I had to find a new love, and I fell in love with psychology and marketing. So I went off to New York City and I worked at a big advertising agency there called Ogilvy. And something interesting happened my first week there. There were about 40 of us who all started together. 39 of them got staffed on these glamorous television commercials and projects. Not me. I got staffed on this new team called digital marketing, and I was pissed off. No one knew what digital marketing was. I called my mom, I cried. I was like, I'm in a dead-end job, Mom. 2 years later, all of those other 39 people who started with me were still getting coffee on television sets, and I was leading the fastest growing team inside the company. And that's when I started getting phone calls, text messages. I'm gonna really date myself. AOL Instant Messenger was the mode of communication from my brother saying, hey Randi, I started this little project called The Facebook and I could really use someone who knows digital marketing. Let me translate that for you in case anyone here has not worked in a family business. What he meant was, I need someone who will work for free. And, so I was like, all right, I love my life in New York City, but
I'll go for a few days. I'll go out to California, I'll give you some advice on marketing, and then I'm going right back to my life in New York City. So off I went out to California, and I thought it's gonna be so glamorous because everything that I knew about California was like celebrities and glamour. It was not glamorous. It was these guys just coding around the clock, eating, I think, like only cupcakes and drinking Red Bull for 3 straight days. And I was like, what have I done? But there was something that was so incredible about being in a room with entrepreneurs like that. And you could see that they were so passionate, that they truly believed they were changing the world. And so at the end of those 3 days, instead of going back to New York City, I decided to stay in California and accept a full-time job at Facebook. What could be weird about that? So my plan when I went out to California was to be there for a few days. 10 years later, I really, only just a few years ago, made it back to New York City. And it was a wild ride being out in Silicon Valley. It was, I mean, it was just the dawn of social media. I got to see the company from about 12 people when I started grow to thousands and thousands of people in an IPO. And the event that you guys all took part in last night, it was also at that time really the dawn of the hackathon. It was that all of these companies were realizing that in order to compete with the big guys, they had to join forces and bring great ideas together. And at Facebook, we would regularly do these hackathons where the only rule was that the project you were working on had to be just completely unrelated to your day job. So you would stay up all night like you did, and if you were still standing in the morning, you got to get up and present your idea. And the ideas were pretty ridiculous. There was one that I really remember for being so ridiculous. It was a trampoline that people hooked up to their iPhone. And so you would jump, and then that would be your new lock and unlock screen. And you had to recreate the identical jump to get back into your phone.
Lol.
Yeah, people were like, oh, that's no problem. And then they jumped for hours and were still locked out of their phone. So when the guy next to you is doing that, there's pretty much nothing that you can do that will top it. So you might as well just bring your biggest, weirdest, and boldest ideas to the table. And I had 2 hackathon projects over the years that I'm pretty proud of that I wanted to share with you today. The first, I created an 80s rock band inside of Facebook. Okay, no one seems that excited about it, and to be totally honest, that's the correct response because we were terrible. We were an awful band, but maybe you'll be a little more excited about my next one. Around the time that the iPhone came out, I got incredibly excited about the idea that every single person in the world could be their own media company. And I started to think, wow, what would a world look like where each of us could be our own television studio, and each of us could be our own radio network, and each of us could create movies on the fly all the time. And so at one of these hackathons, I took over a closet and I created a show called Facebook Live with Randi Zuckerberg. Only back in 2010, you could not just go live from a phone. The technology hadn't caught up to that. So I had these guys wearing heavy backpacks with equipment. We had all kinds of things, and I was so excited about this. And then 2 people tuned in, my mom and dad. That was it. And I got so bummed out by that I went home in the middle of the night. I didn't even stay up to present my idea to the company, and I went home and I was like, well, no one's into live streaming, and Facebook Live is dead. Only, seems like every single one of you in this room has live streamed at some point, so we all know that it did not, in fact, die that night. What happened was a few weeks later, I got a call from pop star Katy Perry's manager saying, Randi, we heard that you're launching a television show at Facebook, and we want Katy Perry to go on it and announce her world tour. And I was about to say, I'm so sorry, it's not a real show. And then I stopped myself and I was like, Randi, what would your male colleagues do? They would want to meet Katy Perry. They would figure out a way to make that happen. And so what came out of my mouth instead was, why yes, Facebook Live is a very reputable television show, and it is exactly where you should launch Katy Perry's world tour. Yes. Sometimes you gotta fake it till you make it in this world. And luckily, all the engineers at Facebook really wanted to meet Katy Perry, so they built it. And in January 2011, the first ever live stream, first ever Facebook Live happened with Katy Perry at Facebook headquarters. Again, in 2011, you could not just go live from a phone. The technology wasn't ready for it then. We had satellite trucks, we had tons of equipment everywhere, and her world tour sold out in minutes. We had millions of people tune into that first ever live stream, and it was just an incredible success. And from then on, politicians, celebrities, sports stars, everyone started calling us and asking if they could do a Facebook Live, because until then, there was no way for anyone to just go direct to their audience. I know that sounds crazy in a world where you guys are making content every day, but in 2011, you could not just make a video and go direct to your audience. And so it completely overnight changed the way that people connected with their communities. And I got to interview so many people. I had a full-time job. I was running marketing, and then my side hustle was like creating the live streaming industry as like a side hustle. And but I got to interview a lot of fun people. I also occasionally, I would throw a bone to a tiny startup in Silicon Valley and just give them a little visibility. So I had these guys on, like, welcome to Facebook Live with Randi Zuckerberg. What's the name of your startup? Twitter. Good luck with that, guys. Well, they did pretty well with it, so good job to them. I also, though, I think one of the funniest memories when I think back on those early days, I was at dinner with my husband, and I actually got to say to him, hold on, the White House is calling. Like, I'm sorry, no one actually gets to say that except in television shows and movies. And President Obama, who was the president at the time, was calling because he wanted to go live to the entire United States on Facebook Live. This was 4 months after the hackathon that only my mom and dad tuned into. 4 months later, the President of the United States was using that product. I got nominated for like a major television award for that. It was the first time in history that someone got nominated for a television award for doing something on the internet for streaming. And but the best thing for me of all was that even a few years after this, one day everyone in the world woke up and had a go live button on their Facebook profile.
Insane.
It took almost 7 years from that first hackathon to that opportunity for all of you to go live. It took 7 years for the tech to catch up. And I know that we talk a lot about like overnight success and going viral and doing, but there's no such thing as overnight success. Anything that looks like an overnight success, I guarantee took years and years and years of work to suddenly explode overnight. But that was an incredible experience for me, because I have to admit to you, when I got on that plane, when I danced across the stage for you and got on that plane to Silicon Valley, I did not think of myself as an entrepreneur. I did not think of myself as the kind of person who could create something that would then create careers for all of you. I just thought of myself as like a shy person behind the scenes who was supporting these other genius entrepreneurs. And so I hope as we're going through these 2 days that all of us are realizing that every single one of us, if you put yourself in a situation where you can put your biggest, boldest, wildest ideas out there, every single one of us is sitting on a 2 billion person project. And so
wow.
Here I was at the top of my game, you guys. I had just created this amazing product. I had all these celebrities on speed dial, like I knew the president. So what did I do? I quit my job. No, now like half of you were like, yeah, the other half of you were like, okay, we already like suspected she was crazy and now we know she is. So like, why? Why would I do that? Why would I walk away from like one of the greatest companies and the greatest things? And the answer is that it's complicated. I loved what we were doing. I loved being in Silicon Valley at the dawn of social media. What I did not love is I did not love being the only woman in every single room that I was in for 10 years. And even to this day, when people ask me for my best advice for being a woman in technology, my best advice is to have a man's name like Randi. And I know I mean, that's like funny and sad, but I can't tell you how many meetings I got in those early days at Facebook because I'd email someone and they thought they were emailing with a dude. And then I'd show up at the meeting and they'd be like, where's your boss, Randi? And I was like, sucker. It was like legitimately my business strategy for about a year in the early days. And so I just thought a lot about what I could do stepping away from the company to give more of a voice to women and girls in the tech industry. But, you know, there were some other big things happening in my life. I became a mom. And that, you know, it's very hard to work 100 hours a week at a startup company while you're also having a family. But the biggest thing, the biggest reason I stepped away is that I got cast in a Broadway show. Now, thank you.
Yay!
I started this all off today by saying that my dream as a young girl going to college was to sing on Broadway, and my dreams got crushed, but when I was 32 years old and sitting in the middle of my living room, I got a call out of the blue from the producers of an 80s rock musical on Broadway, and they were like, Randi, we saw some footage of an 80s rock band that you made. See, none of you were impressed by it, but they were. And they were like, we have been looking for a tech personality who can sing 80s rock music to come star in our Broadway musical. Do you want to star on Broadway? And so after all of that, you guys, after like giving up on my dream, having this wild road to Silicon Valley, Facebook Live, all of that, I moved back to New York to star on Broadway after all. And it was the most incredible experience. And I thought, okay, like this is chapter 2 of my career. Like the year, it was 2019. And I was like, 2020 is gonna be my year. Like it's gonna be the year of live entertainment. And spoiler alert, it was not my year.
Oh, come on.
It was not anyone's year because COVID hit and all of theater shut down for 18 months. And yet again, I found myself with kind of another pivot moment in my life. But I started to look at what other companies were doing to get inspiration. And I found inspiration in kind of one of the silliest of places. There was a goat farm in California. All of their income shut down overnight because they had no more visitors. And they had the most brilliant plan to save their business. Like if I could go back in time and be in one brainstorm ever, I would be in this brainstorm. They launched Goat to Meeting, where their goats would show up in people's corporate Zooms. So if you were like stuck on Zoom, you could hire one of their farm animals to pop into your Zoom, take selfies with everyone, and then leave. It got so popular that they had to recruit 200 other farms from around the world.
What?
And yes, like llamas, ducks, like you could just pick your animal, and it was still booked out for months.
Crazy.
So that made me realize, I was like, okay, if this goat farm can pivot that successfully, every single one of us is resourceful enough to figure out a way to pivot when things go wrong. And it reminded me actually of two scenarios when I was at Facebook where I had to just pivot overnight, and it actually led to some of the best moments of my career. The first, we were gathering all of these developers from around Europe for a conference, and then a volcano went off in Iceland and all air traffic in Europe shut down. And that was actually the first moment that I started thinking of the idea of like, what if we could live stream this conference so that all of those people could feel like they were still there? Again, this was like back in 2009, 2010, live streaming didn't exist. But if I hadn't started thinking that way, I probably never would have even tried to do Facebook Live at that hackathon, and who knows what would have happened there. But, you know, what I've loved about these last 2 days is I feel like I've been learning alongside all of you, because I've sort of found myself as an accidental content creator over the last few years. I've always been kind of on the back side of the camera, where I've been building the tools and giving other people advice on how to be in front of the camera and how to go viral and how to use tech. But I sort of accidentally started finding myself in front of the camera talking about AI, talking about crypto and Web3, you know, trying to really be a very vocal presence for women getting into technology. And it's been fascinating over the last few days to really learn about the tools that all of you are using. And in some ways it feels ironic that, for me to kind of be the creator of some of these things. And now I would almost guarantee that every single person in this room knows more about how to create content on these platforms than I do. And that's, I mean, what a beautiful thing. What a beautiful thing to create that much opportunity for other people, that you guys now become the experts and the masters, and we get to hand that over to another generation. So it's almost been a pretty emotional few days for me. But I've just been thinking a lot about some of the timeless things that have worked since the dawn of Facebook Live till now, and some of the advice even that we were giving to our teams last night. When you're creating content, like you need to hook people in seconds, whatever your content is. Like that hasn't changed in 20 years of content. The kind of work that you were doing that Zach was talking about, is that pre-stream work is what sets you up for post-stream success. I think what is also really exciting is now that you all have one another, you have this incredible collaboration and cross-promotion group that we can lean on in order to make sure and help one another's content be more successful. And I even saw that back in the earliest days of Facebook Live, with people leaning on one another. And I think, one of the other things that I've seen from a lot of you is just you have to treat every single viewer like they're your #1 fan. And I saw that again from the earliest days of people, even if they had one person tuning into their live stream, like you have to give it the same passion and the same enthusiasm if you have millions. Kick in business is a very important job. Like every entrepreneur and founder needs a #2. You need investors, you need people who are going to support you. So like being a professional sidekick is very important in this ecosystem. But I woke up and I realized, gosh, if someone wrote the story of my life, like, would I even be the main character in it? And that's a very kind of vulnerable and humbling realization to come to in your life, that like you might not even be the main character in your own story. And I remember the first time that I crossed the finish line of my first ultra marathon. It was exactly 1 year ago, and I signed up for a 50-mile race. And I crossed the finish line of that race, and I realized that it was kind of the first thing in my entire life that was all mine. Thank you, that no one can look at someone who has run 160 miles or 160 kilometers, or I actually just signed up for a race that is 400 kilometers.
Yay!
No one can
Crazy.
look at that and think
Cosa.
that it's because you're someone's sister, or because you're someone's wife, or because you're someone's mom.
Αποθυμένο.
So I just wanted to close by saying that I wish that for all of us in our lives, that we all step into that main character energy with having an appropriate amount of sidekick energy too, because you have to be a good member of your community. But at the end of the day, do something that when people look at it, they realize that it is your own hard work, your own grit, and your own spirit that led to that success. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Yay!
Thank you so much, Randi.